Hi, Simon Jacobson here. Welcome to another episode of Meaningful Live. Update from the spiritual Warfront, week 6. The rise and fall of nations. So as always, I like to begin with dedication. This program is dedicated by Avram Ashkenazi, dear friend, in celebration of his birthday, to offer hope and strength to Israel during this time of deep trial. Our prayers, our hearts and souls go out to all the innocent men, women, and children. War is not something that anybody wants. Sometimes it's a necessity that is not up to us. When it's thrust upon you by enemies, we'd like to believe that people can resolve issues and differences in peaceful ways, but it's not always the case. It's tragic. And I'm not going to go now into the cosmic and the metaphysical and spiritual reasons for it, but and the heart of it all comes down to that we live in a world that can be very dark at times, where we do not feel that we're part of one organism, that we're not part of one reality, and that when one part is hurting, others are hurting as well. And therefore, by killing, murdering, atrocities against one each other, you're actually hurting yourself. But there are people in this earth, whatever reason, have made that choice. Maybe it's due to ignorance, maybe it's due to bad upbringing, maybe it's due to brainwashing. Again, I'm not going to analyze it right now. I would like to focus on the spiritual war. Because at the end of the day, we are not here to fight against things. We're here to fight for something. You fight against simply because you have to stop the bleeding. You have to get rid of the infection. You have to eliminate that which can hurt you. But you're fighting for a vision, for values, for standards. And the way I like to put it, for ultimately, what is the divine plan for this earth, for all 8 billion people on this earth? That's what we're fighting for. So the end game is not just eradicating terrorists or eradicating evil or eradicating people who can just wantonly murder in the most brutal ways others, but it's to bring a message of hope, of love. And that's why I go back to myself. It just, besides giving solace and comfort, it's just very solid ground to go back literally thousands of years to the man called Abraham. Yes, the Patriarch Abraham in the Bible, who introduced and pioneered the concepts of truth, of virtue, of justice, instead of living a life of dog eats dog, survival of the fittest, which can then, if you just continue along that direction, leads to anarchy and to ultimately every crime, every war, every injustice perpetrated from one human being against another, to live a life of giving, of love. And even when there's a difference between two people and their opinions, and it should be that way, that human beings have different ways of looking at things, there's a way to discover a peaceful path instead of a violent one. So we're fighting for, not against. And that's why we don't just look at this as a military battle, we look at it as a spiritual battle. A spiritual battle, what do you stand for? What are you ready to fight for? And I'm not justifying what has happened here. I will just say it's definitely a wake-up call. It's a wake-up call. Maybe we've gotten too complacent, too apathetic, too indifferent. I see so many young people are so confused and so lost. They're not used to this. Someone asked me, I said very simple, they're rusty. Not only rusty, even those that have strong values, sometimes you're not fighting for those values, you get rusty. And for a whole generation, really since World War II, that has never had to fight a battle and war, thank God. And the biggest wars have been video games, or the wars between sports teams, or some other nonsensical and insignificant battle, or between soap operas. What are you going to watch on television? It's very, very, very meaningless battles. Then when you're suddenly faced with real good and evil, life and death, what do you do with that? The only place that people can say it, I remember by September 11th, people were saying it's just like a movie. They were comparing reality to a movie when it should be the other way around. But that, in a way, is also part of the blessing. We've lived comfortably, and you never had to see blood. You never saw bloodshed. You never saw hatred. Now suddenly hatred is in the streets, including in the United States, on campuses, demonstrations. Suddenly you don't know what to do with it. You're not trained to think that way. But we've been thrust into this place. So to turn it into an opportunity is to say, now is the time to crystallize. What do you stand for? And that's the essence of what a real spiritual war is about. What do you stand for? Even military wars can only be truly won in the heart and souls of those that are fighting the wars. Because if you don't believe what you're fighting for, yes, you may be a dedicated, loyal military person. You may be a dedicated soldier or dedicated someone in the Navy or in the Air Force. But bottom line is, if you don't believe in it, it's going to be very difficult to really keep it up because you're dealing with very dire situations where your friends near you can be dying in your hands and so on. And that's why you see Vietnam was not won or lost on the battlefield. It was one of in the hearts and minds of Americans. As soon as America turned against the war, the cause didn't speak to people. That cause, that vague cause that no one really fully got about avoiding the domino effect of communist influence in the Far East and in Far East Asia and so on, that did not resonate. That's where the war is. So it's not about how many weapons you have and your arsenal and personnel and sophisticated weapons. It's your heart and soul, your morale. What is your moral conviction? Why are you fighting? When you're fighting when Pearl Harbor was attacked, America woke up. Yes, the sleeping tiger woke up. Because suddenly they were attacked unprovoked, innocent people. You start saying, 1 second, what's going on here? And very similarly is what happened on October 7th and its subsequent consequences in the streets and the campuses and all the different opinions. So nobody asked for this, and it's not something we prefer wouldn't happen. But now's the time to stand up, that each one of us, and I say this even though I speak as a Jew, but I say this to Jew and Gentile, I say it to Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Buddhist, Hindu, it doesn't really matter. Religious, not religious, atheist, agnostic, believer, non-believer, every one of us, that we have to stand up. What do we stand for? What do you consider to be right and wrong? What are we ready to fight for? Is everything ambiguous? Is everything relative? Yes, we understand in a free world, there's the concept, there's two sides to every story, but there are lines that should never be crossed. And I really believe this. I speak this in hopefully in an objective way, that if all people fighting, what are you fighting for? So often it's connected to a religious war. I have read enough Muslim philosophy and spoken to enough Muslims. Many feel there is a religious war, that God wants Islam to be the dominating religion on earth because Christianity and Judaism failed, became corrupt, bankrupt, and so on. So even though there's one little sliver called Israel, cannot be under the control of Jews. God wants it to be under the control of Muslims. And some will even argue, and we'll protect the Jews. Whether you believe that or not is another story. But it's a religious conviction. I respect it only for one reason, because they have some religious conviction. I disagree with it. I disagree with adamantly. Because I will say, the Jews are not looking to conquer the world under Judaism. There's one country called the Holy Land, promised to the Jews. That's all that Jews want to have. But it cannot be just because they have another piece of geography. It is for a holy purpose. The verse says that from Zion will come the word of God, the Torah and the word of God. Israel should be the number one export, should be exporting what God wants of all human beings. All human beings. At the end of the day, Islam and Christianity and then Islam all came out of Judaism. All trace their roots back to Abraham. So I see this as a battle and a war for what vision does God want for this world? What vision should we be implementing? What should humanity look like? And my answer is very straightforward. We are diverse human beings of different genders, of different nations and cultures and languages. And there are no two people exactly alike. And when God says, I want harmony within the diversity, I want you each to contribute your note, your musical note. You all have something indispensable to contribute. Learn to work together, learn to complement each other, create synergy, and make this world into a better place, into a garden. If you have a difference of opinion, figure out how to speak to each other in a civil way. Now, I know it sounds naive, it sounds almost, especially now, and idealistic, But the fact is, this is the dream. This is the vision. And I will tell you, we've made much progress. If you compare the trajectory of history, despite the wars that are being fought right now, the fact is the graph will show a dramatic fall and in violence, in wars, and so on. Steven Pinker documents it well. So we see changes have been made. I have no doubt that these changes are a result of the collective and exponential effect of the good deeds and the sacrifices and the wars and the battles. I'm talking about the spiritual battles for good and for goodness and for virtue. So we have today institutionalized governments that are built on the principles of the universal laws of morality given to us by God at Sinai. And I'll name them. The 7 universal laws are this: that there's a God, that we're accountable to something greater than us, that you shall not defile that higher reality. 3, protect life, do not murder. 4, protect property, do not steal. 5, protect sexuality, make sure it's moral, make sure it's healthy. 6, protect the environment, do not be cruel to animals and to other forms of life. And finally, 7, create laws, a system of justice, of law and order, where people can be held accountable and where everybody's treated equally. If the human race would embrace these 7 principles, we would have total redemption. And we all can agree to them, actually. But still, people will say, but it's my way. But you can't kill somebody. Simple as that. You can't steal from other people. You have a disagreement, go to a court of law, figure it out. Okay, I'm not trying to be simplistic. I understand there are deep-rooted issues. I also don't want to go into the longest hatred of history called antisemitism. That itself needs to be dissected and analyzed. What is that exactly? What have the Jews done to so many people who claim that they hate Jews? They may not say they hate Jews, they hate Zionists, they hate Israel. And we have all the other lines, but there is some deep embedded hatred. I actually gave a class about this last Wednesday night. You can check it out. The Evil of Anti-Semitism. Go to our YouTube channel or meaningfullife.com. You can find that as well as many other programs on related topics. So it's a battle for, not a battle anti. We're not trying to erase. War is not just to eliminate racism, to eliminate hatred, to eliminate evil. The war is to bring good into this world. And that's what you and I and all of us can be part of. Because at the end of the day, this world is made up of individuals like ourselves. If there's enough of us, a grassroots effort can create that ripple butterfly effect that can transform the critical, can tip the scale and transform the critical mass. So as far as an update goes, I see it this way. As things develop and after we've gone through still shock, and it's still disturbing what the images and the stories that are coming out from that region on all levels. I have a few thoughts that I'd like to share as an update about the spiritual warfront. And that is, I've been thinking about this a lot. As from a Jewish perspective, anti-Semitism. So throughout history, Jews were pretty much at the mercy of their hosts. Maybe they could ingratiate themselves, but they didn't have much control. We saw what happened in Germany in the 30s, the last century. We saw what happened in the Spanish Empire. We saw what happened in the Soviet Union. Prior to that, Tsarist Russia. You name it, you go back in history. So there were times of benevolent leaders who were kinder, but generally it was a history of a lot of oppression, and sometimes of the worst possible. And they really had no recourse. Where could they go? It wasn't like some other country was welcoming them in. What is different today is that even though there is that hatred and that anti-Semitism, but Jews have an option. Besides having a strong country and a military to protect themselves, but there's another thing that jumped out at me. We have the option not just to play defense, but to play offense. You're attacking us because we're Jewish? You're attacking us because you feel something's wrong with Jews? Let us teach you what a Jew is. And let's go back to that first Jew called Abraham. And the blessings he brought to you in your life, the values you cherish, the freedoms you have. You know where that came from? So this is an opportunity to actually, that's where the laser focus is on Jews, on Israel. Let's teach you what a true Jew is. Let's teach you what true Israel is meant to be. Now, I'm not suggesting every Jew and everything that happens in Israel is perfect. But what's the standard? What does the Bible expect? What does God expect? And then you come to discover that the greatest values, as Thomas Cale writes in his classic book, The Gifts of the Jews, the most important principles of life originate with the Jewish people. Or if you want to go back to Abraham. And Abraham's father of all nations. We're not trying to pull rank. So I see this the exact opposite. Instead of cowering in fear or retreating or feeling helpless, we have an opportunity to go on the offense and say, you want to know what light is like? And maybe that's what the problem is. Maybe the dark world has a problem with someone that's bringing in light, like kill the witness. Now, I find moral people everywhere. I'm not in any way suggesting that only Jews are moral. There are many immoral Jews and there are many moral non-Jews. Very moral non-Jews. Because we're not talking about the Jew versus a non-Jew. We're talking about the principles. We're talking about archetype. The archetype of we were all created in the divine image and have therefore inalienable rights endowed to us by the Creator. How will you use those rights? How will you use those gifts? That should be the call of our times. That's what means the spiritual war on the offense. The best defense is offense. This isn't about anti-Semitism. This isn't about anti-discrimination or anti-hatred. That's inevitable. And that's you have to deal with on the ground level, especially when you're under attack. Not taking that away. Just as I said, you have to stop the bleeding. But the real goal is to create a healthy organism, is to create a healthy life. One thought. Another seems to me very skewed. Maybe that's a mild word. Very distorted, which infuriates me. You know, Israel went into the Al-Shifa hospital. And now Israel has to become defensive. Why? Why'd you go into hospital? As if like Israel has nothing to do but to take their soldiers and go into a regular hospital like a Western hospital and just kill patients. That's the suggestion. What's your evidence? Why'd you go in there? You really, first of all, you need evidence. You just saw on October 7th, those that saw the images will never forget them, and those that didn't know about it. Not just brutal, the mutilation, the defiling of bodies to the point you can't recognize them, the rapes. I mean, people who've seen the worst war crimes have never seen anything like that. So this is people that we're going to trust and say, oh, you know what, they're going to protect the hospital. They're not near hospitals. Why are they not on the defense? Of why are there weapons in these hospitals? Why are there tunnels under these hospitals? So, of course, the response is all Israeli propaganda. So Israel has nothing to do with themselves. 1,400 people were killed. Now some people saying that's also a myth, even though it was the killers themselves that streamed the pictures and videos. So Israel has nothing to do but just to go in and sacrifice their own soldiers to do what? Just to kill innocent civilians. I'm not getting into the innocence of the civilians. I'm sure many of them are. That would be like saying that Great Britain and the Allies went just kill innocent civilians in Germany. That's not the case. So you have to be on the defense and start justifying why you went into a hospital that has become a command center, being used to shoot missiles, schools, mosques, hospitals. I find it infuriating. Not only are you not accusing who should be accused, Hamas is holding hostage. This war can end in 1 second. You want a ceasefire? Why doesn't Hamas simply surrender? Why does the world not call for Hamas's surrender? Return the hostages. Declare once and for all that we will eliminate the constitution that calls for the eradication of Israel and the Jewish people. What do you think will happen then? That's not what they want. As a matter of fact, the only way to win this war is in the minds, as I said, in the hearts of people that look at how many civilians in Gaza are being killed, which is tragic. But who's killing them? Oh, Israel's killing them. No, you're hiding behind them. Surrender and you won't have that if you really care about your civilians. And then even Germany surrendered because at some point they realized, I don't think you're dealing with people that will ever surrender. They'd rather die before they surrender, which we're not even going to go into right now. It's a whole other discussion. And some more things about the spiritual front that I'd like to share. I have seen such nobility, such beauty, such dignity emerge from all corners. Because again, this is what happens. You see who's who. As Warren Buffett says, when the tide is out, you know who's been swimming naked. Now you see who's who, which is a blessing of clarity. At least we can identify what people stand for. And we are seeing beautiful acts in the Middle East, as well as in the United States and other countries. So this is some of the report from the organizations, clash, firstly between Yishmael and Isaac, which are the ancestors, respectively, of the Arab Muslim world and of the Jewish world and Israel. And Esav then is introduced, who is the ancestor of the Western Roman Christian world. Jacob escapes and has to run away, and while also going to find his soulmate. And that's how this chapter begins, that Jacob left Be'er Sheva, a city in Israel, and he goes, Vayelech Harana, he travels to Haran, which is somewhat northeast, to go find a bride. Haran comes from the word wrath, anger. So the commentaries explain that this is the story of each one of our lives. Jacob represents the souls coming down into this world. A pure soul coming from this fountain of seven, Be'er Sheva. Seven refers to the seven divine attributes, the seven spheres, on the spiritual level. And from there it descends into a hostile world, a dark world, a difficult world, a world where it takes effort to find light within darkness, a dark world. And Jacob is afraid. He falls asleep, we hear. Where does he fall asleep? He realizes, he wakes up because he has a dream. He wakes up, he realizes he's on the Temple Mount. Yes, in Jerusalem, on the Temple Mount. He realizes, I'm sleeping on the Temple Mount, and he calls it the gate to heaven, the portal between the divine and existence, the place where heaven and earth kiss and meet, the integration of the transcendent and the immanent, the essential purpose of existence itself. And what dream did he have? The dream is that he sees a ladder firmly planted on the ground, reaching into the skies. And on the ladder he sees angels rising and falling. So we're told, what was he seeing? What was this ladder? It says the ladder is the rise and fall of empires to come. All the great empires to come is what he witnessed. Similar to what Abraham witnessed that we discussed a few weeks ago. He saw the future. And he saw the empires that would dominate and even oppress the world, including his own children, the Jewish people. But then he also saw their fall, the rise and fall of nations. So it both terrified him, but also reassured him. And he says to God, but I don't know what will be. I'm going off to Haran, to my uncle, who was a cruel criminal himself, a malicious criminal, corrupt, Laban. What will be with me? And God says, remember, like the rise and fall of nations, you too will go through your ups and downs. You're going to a dark place, but I will be with you. And he says to him, let's read together, reading straight from the biblical verses. He says like this. I am God of Abraham, your father, and God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land upon which you are lying. Israel, land of Israel. Your descendants will be plentiful like the dust of the earth. You shall spread out to the west, to the east, to the north, and to the south. And all the families on earth, listen to this, will be blessed through you and your descendants. They will be blessed through you and your descendants. God continues, I am with you. I will protect you wherever you go and bring you back to this soil, as he was leaving Israel. I will not turn aside from you until I have fully kept this promise to you. So you can imagine Jacob armed with this promise. we came back with, it was revived with a renewed vigor, a renewed hope, understanding that there's a bigger story. And the same thing with what would happen to his children. So when you apply all that to the events today, you can say exactly the same thing. Going into a world of Haran, a world of Hamas, a world of anger and wrath and violence. But don't be afraid, because I am with you, God says, and you will prevail. And though some nations and empires rose, some great empires, they also fell. And the end of the story is your children will spread all over the earth, and their teachings will spread, the teachings of morality and goodness, and it will be a blessing to all the families on this earth. A blessing to all the families on this earth. That is what we are fighting for. So as I read this chapter, and then we continue to see what happens. So indeed, Jacob is challenged. His uncle is not a simple guy. Tries to deceive him and does deceive him. But what happens? Where does Jacob build his family? He builds it in Haran, not in Israel. He builds his family. All his children, except his youngest, Benjamin, would be born in Israel, are born and grow up in Haran. So not only is this dark place, if this place of wrath, not overwhelm him, on the contrary, he transforms it into an asset, this liability. He uses it as a springboard to become the powerful Jacob and family that he became. And then at the end of the chapter, we hear how he travels back. And the story will continue as we will continue to discuss it in the coming weeks. So this gives me so much power and energy. And I hope it gives you as well, because it's not a story of today. It's a story that's been unfolding, and in different forms and fashions, and different characters in different locations. But ultimately, the battle here is to fulfill the purpose for which we were created, which is to take this dark and hostile world and turn it into a garden, a divine garden. And that's up to you and I as we continue to wage this spiritual war. So, I assure you, from my end, I will do whatever is possible together with our team. Thank God we've been putting out a lot of content. I understand that this is only one part of the battle. There are other battles to be fought, but we all have to complement each other. And I welcome, let's join together and welcome you to join me, to join us all in this continuing spiritual battle. Because now is not a time to stand on the sidelines. Today we need to be proactive. The key thing of a military person, of a soldier, is not we're sitting around. You're proactive. You mobilize yourself, you draft yourself, enlist yourself, and become a proactive human being, which means initiate. Do an extra good deed, an extra mitzvah, light an extra candle. Reach out to people. Host something in your home. Have others host. Imagine if each of us reached 5 other people, and those 5 reached another 5 people. That's called the ripple butterfly effect. There's only 5 degrees of separation between us. We could change the world, and we will change the world. That's what all of this is meant to be. An ultimate wake-up call. What you stand for, what your values are, and if you need to, read about it, and learn about it, and then act on it. Definitely need to be informed. There's a lot of misinformation and disinformation. That's also part of this battle, the information war, media war over our minds and hearts. I have no doubt, just as Jacob was promised, and we see it was fulfilled, that the land of Israel, the promised land, the Jewish people, and all peoples on this earth will be blessed. We'll be blessed because we will live up to what God's mandate, calling to all of us are, why we're here on this earth. May we experience it immediately, least amount of pain, ultimately filling the world with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea, which, as the prophet tells us, no longer will allow for evil and destruction. A world filled with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea. A world of no war, no avarice, only peace and love and harmony within the diversity of nations. God bless you. God bless all innocent people on this earth. And may we do our part. Thank you so much. Simon Jacobson here. I welcome your comments, your thoughts, your suggestions, your critique as well. Please share this with others. Let's have that ripple effect. And please subscribe to our growing YouTube channel, Meaningful